U.S. strikes on Iran have devastated the Islamist regime. Its leaders dead, its military in tatters. But one question remains: can this really lead to regime change? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. All right, we're on day 4 of the conflict with Iran. And we've already seen a spike in oil prices, and it's spilling over into U.S. stocks and commodities in all sorts of ways, which is why I'm so grateful to today's sponsor, investing.com. They help people like you and me understand how domestic and world events affect our investments. And their sponsorship allows me to make episodes like this when YouTube tends to demonetize anything about, actual news. You might have seen investing.com, but you might not be familiar with Investing Pro, their flagship product. Investing Pro is a professional-grade research and data platform that helps you analyze stocks, understand company fundamentals, and make more informed long-term decisions. And it's all in one place. I can see the stock picks of some of the most successful investors, hedge funds, Warren Buffett, and so on. For example, how did Luxor Capital generate nearly 200% return in just 3 years? Well, these are their biggest holdings. I can use this as inspiration for my own long-term strategy. And if you follow U.S. politics and global events like I do, you know that world events drive headlines, and those headlines move markets. That's where their Warren AI tool comes in. Like if I ask it, which assets offer protection amid the escalation in the Middle East, I get a full analysis on things like gold, defense, and energy prices. That's why investing.com is a great tool if you're a savvy day trader, but for me, I'm way too busy making episodes every day. I prefer a long-term buy and hold strategy, so I can generate great returns over the next several years and decades. Investing.com helps me pick the right stocks at the right time. And Investing.com is currently running a flash sale promo, offering up to 55% off Investing Pro. Plus, if you use my link, you'll unlock an additional 15% discount on top of that. So if you want actual data, not just headlines, to guide your market strategy, this is the best tool you can use. Click the link in the description and use the code AmericaUncovered to secure your Investing Pro access at the lowest available price. This offer is only for a limited time, so click below and take advantage before it's over. And now, on with the show. As I've said, we're on day 4 after the U.S. bombed Iran, and it can be difficult to tell what's going on, fog of war and all that. But here's what we do know. For one, the U.S. and Israel have been pummeling Iranian government and military installations non-stop. Not just every night, but also during brazen daylight raids. It's unclear whether this speaks to the power of the U.S. Air Force or just how badly Iran's Chinese and Russian-made air defense is performing. If anyone in the Iranian government is still alive and watching this, I urge you, please log on to Temu and request a refund. Iran's Navy, meanwhile, isn't faring much better. The U.S. recently sunk 9 Iranian warships, meaning their surface fleet is effectively hamstrung. As Iran's losses mount, President Trump once again urged Iran's armed forces to give up the fight.
I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military, and police, to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death. Won't be pretty.
That was his message to the rank and file, anyway. But when it comes to Iran's senior leadership, well, they weren't really given the choice. Ayatollah Khamenei, he's dead. Iran's acting supreme leader, he's apparently dead too. Along with the commander of the IRGC, the secretary of Iran's Defense Council, the defense minister, and a whole host of others. Now, as you may have noticed, the regime hasn't fallen yet, despite losing several key figures. Granted, it's still early days, and Trump said this operation could go on for weeks. The War Powers Resolution gives the president 60 days to conduct military operations without congressional authorization. After that, Congress would have to sign off on it. So technically, the U.S. could just keep playing Iranian leader whack-a-mole for some time. Or at least until someone in Iran's leadership throws up their hands and says, "All right, we surrender." Now, we have no idea who that person might be, though Trump says he has an idea. In an interview with The Atlantic, the president said that Iran's new leadership wants to talk with him and that he plans to do so, noting that many of Iran's previous negotiators are no longer alive, and adding, "They could have made a deal. They should have done it sooner. They played too cute." Trump makes a good point. Khamenei was too cute for his own good. This is the guy who bragged online about how naughty and playful he was. Let that be a warning to all the radical clerics out there. If you threaten the United States, we will dig through your old tweets and make fun of you. Honestly, Khamenei should be happy he no longer has to live with posts like that hanging over his head. But anyway, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Will this U.S. bombing campaign work? Can air power alone actually cause a regime change? Well, conventional wisdom says no. Just look at history. Saddam Hussein's military got absolutely wrecked during the Gulf War. This led to an uprising at home, but Saddam's forces still managed to put them down with all the brutality you'd expect. He stayed in power for another 12 years and was removed only after a U.S. ground invasion in 2003. Or how about Serbian dictator Slobodan Milosevic? His government faced a series of defeats during the Yugoslav wars and was bombed by NATO in 1999 during the Kosovo War. He stayed in power for another year and lost power after an election and resistance from a well-organized youth movement called Opt-Por. So does Trump really think this bombing campaign alone will overthrow Iran's government? Probably not. Remember, he emphasized the need for police, military, and average citizens to band together and overthrow the regime.
I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country. America is with you.
But what does that look like in practice? Can Iran's people, even with defectors from the police and military, really take on the IRGC that's keeping the mullahs in power? Maybe. And if you want an example of how that could possibly play out, there's no better example than communist Romania. Think back to the end of the Cold War. Nicolae Ceausescu has ruled Romania since 1965. He spent 24 years building one of the most paranoid, totalitarian police states in the Eastern Bloc. His secret police, the Securitate, were everywhere. Informants in every apartment building. Surveillance in every workplace. The kind of regime that didn't just imprison dissidents, it made dissent feel impossible. Romania had no solidarity movement like Poland, no organized underground like Czechoslovakia, not much civic opposition. Ceausescu had been so thorough in crushing dissent that when 1989 came and every other Eastern European regime started falling, Hungary, East Germany, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, many observers assumed Romania would be the exception. But they were wrong. On December 21st, 1989, Ceausescu did something he'd done 1,000 times before. He called a mass rally in Bucharest. 100,000 people bussed in from factories and state institutions. A made-for-TV show of loyalty. And then the crowd started booing. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. Ceausescu didn't know what to do. He held up his hand for silence, but the silence didn't come. And at that moment, something broke. Not just in the square, but in the entire country watching events unfold on television. Within 24 hours, the army had switched sides. Gunfire and chaos spread throughout the capital, with much of it blamed on Securitate loyalists. But it was a lost cause. Within 6 days, Ceausescu and his wife were tried by a military tribunal and executed. Just like Iran, Romania had no organized opposition, no clear ideology to rally around. And of course, they didn't have the US blowing up the regime's leaders. What really led to the fall of communist Romania was a crack in the regime's aura of invincibility. Now here's where the Iran comparison gets really interesting. For a Romania-style collapse to happen, you need a regime whose foundational promise to its people has already been broken. Ceausescu's promise was stability, national pride, and Romanian sovereignty. By 1989, Romanians were in the dark. Literally, the government had cut electricity to save hard currency, while Ceausescu built palaces and exported food the country needed. The promise was broken long before the rally. The rally just made it visible. Now let's look at the Iranian regime's broken promises. Iran was supposed to be a regional hegemon, the capital of the axis of resistance. Their oil wealth was used to fund an army of proxies all across the Middle East, from Hezbollah to Hamas to the Houthis in Yemen. Using these groups, Iran wanted to show that it could stand up to the United States and Israel, propping up friendly regimes and launching attacks at the great Satan anywhere at any time. But look at them now. Iran's economy is in tatters. Their oil wealth has dried up under sanctions. Inflation is destroying the Iranian people's quality of life. And that's what triggered the most recent bouts of domestic unrest. Its proxies, meanwhile, have been gutted. Hamas's hold over the Gaza Strip has been broken. Hezbollah has been mostly destroyed. The Houthis remain little more than an annoyance. And with Bashar al-Assad in exile, Iran's land corridor through Syria remains disrupted, essentially cutting the regime off from the Mediterranean. And then you have the attacks on Iran itself. During last year's 12-day war, Israel conducted direct strikes inside Iranian territory. Iran's air defenses were severely damaged. The regime said it could not happen, but it did. Iran's regime made a foundational promise to its people and to the region. We are the resistance. We cannot be defeated. We are what America and Israel fear. But that promise has been broken over and over for all the Iranian people to see. By the time Khamenei's compound was hit on Saturday, the regime's aura of invincibility was gone. The strikes didn't create the vulnerability, they just made it visible. The same way that Bucharest crowd made visible what every Romanian already knew. And what about the IRGC? Well, look again at Romania. The regular Romanian military was resentful, underfunded, and was challenged by the Securitate for decades. The same can be said of Iran's regular army, the Artesh, and their rivalry with the IRGC. The 12-day war exploited that tension. Israeli strikes hit IRGC assets specifically, largely sparing the Artesh. The message was deliberate. We are not at war with the Iranian state, we are at war with the IRGC. Of course, the current campaign is messier. You can't run airstrikes into Tehran without hitting Artesh-operated air defense and navy ships, so the Artesh is taking damage too. But the underlying question is still, when the moment comes, which way do the soldiers point? In Romania, the army pointed at the Securitate. Not because of a plan, not because of an organized opposition, but because of a decision made by people who had their own grievances, their own families, and their own exhaustion with a system that had used and sidelined them. And there's one more parallel with Iran I'd like to point out: the succession problem. Ceausescu's Romania also had no clear succession plan. The regime's entire structure was built around one man. When he fell, what rushed in to fill the vacuum wasn't an organized opposition. It was whoever was holding institutional power at that exact moment. In this case, it turned out to be the National Salvation Front, a coalition of Communist Party reformers, military officers, and opportunists who were anti-Ceausescu but very much products of the system. They weren't high-minded democratic liberals, but they were different enough from what came before that the country could start moving in a new direction. Iran's equivalent might look something like a coalition of reformist clerics, technocrats, and perhaps most importantly, Artesh officers who decided the IRGC era is over. It probably won't be a clean democratic transition. It probably won't be a Western-friendly government overnight, but it can be different. A regime the US can actually negotiate with. A regime oriented towards survival rather than ideology. If Iran falls, it'll be a cascade that, once started, will move faster than anyone can manage or predict. And let's just hope the US doesn't have to return in a few years and do it all again. But what do you think? Who do you think will lead Iran once the bombs stop falling? Leave a comment below. I do read as many as I can. And if you want to be a smart investor, Use investing.com to help you invest your money where there's real potential based on what's happening in the markets right now. Click below to get the best possible price on Investing Pro during their flash sale. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.